Was suspended from the Labour Party yesterday pending an investigation into whether tweets she sent before she was an MP were anti-Semitic. She had already resigned her minor and unpaid post as a parliamentary private secretary to the Shadow Chancellor, John McDonnell. The party will hope to draw a line under the matter now, but today more questions are being asked about its handling of this and other allegations of anti-Semitism. Here's Joko.
Yesterday, MP Naz Shah was suspended by the Labour Party following the discovery of social media posts she made in 2014 criticising Israel. One post suggested the country should be moved to the United States, while another showed Martin Luther King with the caption, "Never forget that everything Hitler did in Germany was legal," with the hashtag Apartheid Israel. This is not the first time the Labour Party has been accused of having a problem with anti-Semitism. Last month, activists Jerry Downing and Vicky Kirby were suspended. And yesterday, Bradford councillor Mohammed Shabir was also excluded from the party. Several senior Labour politicians, including Lord Levy, said the party has a serious issue with anti-Semitism. Labour MPs John Mann and Wes Streeting have criticised leader Jeremy Corbyn for being flat-footed on the issue and said they want to see the Labour leadership being more proactive. The Board of Deputies, a body that represents British Jews, has also called on the Labour Party to re-establish its credibility on this issue and implement a strategy to rebuild trust. Andrew.
We're joined now by Ken Livingstone. He's co-convener of the Labour Party's International Commission, who is now himself facing calls to be suspended from the Labour Party. Welcome to the programme. You, in general, don't think there's a problem with anti-Semitism in the Labour Party?
I mean, literally, I've been a member for 47 years. I've never heard anyone say anything anti-Semitic. I've heard a lot of criticism of Israel. And, I mean, if I was to criticise the South African government as riddled with corruption, you wouldn't say I was racist. You would say I've been critical of that government. And I think blurring these two things undermines the real importance of anti-Semitism, because a real anti-Semite doesn't just hate the Jews in Israel. They hate their Jewish neighbour in Golders Green or in Stoke Newington. It's a physical loathing.
So when Naz Shah MP advocates the forcible removal of Israeli Jews to the United States, that's not anti-Semitism?
No, it's completely over the top and rude. But I supported Naz in her campaign to win that seat.
But is that not anti-Semitism?
No, I don't think... She was completely rude, completely over the top. Who am I to denounce anyone for doing that?
The forcible deportation of Jews.
It was wrong. It was something...
Not anti-Semitic?
I don't think she is anti-Semitic. It was incredibly rude, but I don't believe she's an anti-Semite. And I think when the NEC investigation is finished, they'll say it was rude and it was over the top, but they won't find any evidence she was actually hates Jews.
Well, when she urges in an online poll that she wants people to vote her way because, quote, the Jews are rallying, that's not anti-Semitic?
I mean, we've got to investigate all these charges and the context in which they're made. If she is anti-Semitic, like the other 3 or 4 members we found are anti-Semitic, she will be expelled.
When she also posted a tweet linking to a blog which claimed that Zionism was grooming Jews to exert influence at the highest levels of public life, is that not anti-Semitism?
That is part of that classic anti-Semitic thing about there's an international Jewish conspiracy. Yeah. But the reason
she tweeted a link to the blog.
The reason we're having the inquiry is to find out what absolutely is the truth.
But you've said that there isn't a problem. I suggest to you that the evidence that I'm giving you suggests that at the very least one should have an open mind.
Oh, I've got an open mind.
No, you've said that she's not anti-Semitic.
I've seen nothing to suggest to me she's anti-Semitic.
What have I just told you?
I wouldn't have supported her if I thought she was anti-Semitic.
When she puts on social media, when she disseminates a slogan, "Never forget that everything Hitler did in Germany was legal," is that not anti-Semitic?
That's a statement of fact. I mean, Hitler, I'm sure, passed all the laws that allowed him to do those terrible things.
But what's the point of that fact?
Well, I don't know. It's history. I mean, but literally, Hitler was completely mad. He killed 6 million Jews.
So why would you underline that it was legal to kill 6 million Jews?
She's not saying it's legal, but what they did in the way they run that country allowed them not just to kill 6 million Jews, but kill all the communists, kill all the lefties like me. You know, my father almost died when a Nazi sub sank his boat. I have no sympathy with Hitler.
We all have fathers who almost died, not all, but some of us have fathers who almost died at the hands of the Nazis. When you say again you'd have never heard of any anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, so when the Luton Labour councillor Asikal Goebbels was suspended after describing Hitler as the greatest man in history and saying she wanted Iran to be wiped out, she wanted Iran to wipe out Israel in a nuclear attack, that is not anti-Semitism?
No, that is, and that's why she's been suspended or expelled.
But you've said that there isn't anti-Semitism in the Labour
Party. No, what
Party.
I've said is, in 47 years in the party, in all the meetings I've been at, I've never heard anyone say anything anti-Semitic.
Well,
There's bound to be, in a party with nearly half a million people, you'll have a handful of mad anti-Semites, you'll have a handful of racists.
Well, you don't seem to be knowing what's going on in your own party then, and you've been a lifelong member.
Yeah.
When Vicky Kirby, senior figure in the Labour Woking Party, indeed a candidate at one stage, when she says Jews have big noses and slaughter the oppressed, is that anti-Semitism?
That's anti-Semitic, but that is not a typical Labour Party member.
But there is a problem.
I mean, you've managed to dig out, virtually every anti-Semitic comment Labour Party
These are all
members have
from
made.
very recent years,
Yeah,
Mr Livingstone.
but that's
in
out
which
of
you've
half a
said you've
million
never
members.
heard anything.
And I never have.
And you didn't know about these?
No, when they erupted in the news, yes, I knew about them
So
then.
there is.
I've never met any of these people.
And meeting them is not the issue, it's what they say is the issue. When Kadim Hussein, former Labour mayor of Bradford, shared a post complaining that the schools in the area only taught Anne Frank and 6 million Zionists killed by Hitler, that's not anti-Semitism?
That's why he's been suspended.
So there is a problem.
No, there's not a problem. You're talking about a handful of people in a party of 500,000. Jeremy Corbyn has moved rapidly to deal with all of them.
No, he
If any of them
hasn't. He
turns
didn't
out-
want Naz Shah to be suspended. He didn't even want Vicky Kirby to be suspended. She's the
He
one,
met
by
with-
the way, who says Jews have long noses and slaughter the oppressed.
He met with Naz and they agreed she would stand down while the investigation goes on. He called her in to see her. We have handled these things very rapidly.
Miss Shah has a colleague and friend, also a member of the Bradford Labour Party, indeed a Bradford councillor, who's not been suspended, refers to the Jewish people as Zios, which you will know is a racial epithet. Is that not anti-Semitism?
If it's anti-Semitic, he'll be expelled.
But he
But
hasn't
you're
been.
talking about... there's been a huge investigation now, virtually everything everyone's ever put on the internet, and these things have been found.
But you've
They're
said there's
being
not a
suspended.
problem. 47 years has never been a problem.
And in 47 years, I've never heard anyone say
so you
anything
missed all of
anti-Semitic.
this?
No, many of these people are quite new and recent members of the party who joined in the big influx. 300,000 new people came in. Some of them are bound to be
Most of these are not part of the 300. Maybe you don't see anti-Semitism because you set a very high bar for it. After all, you're the man that welcomed Yusuf al-Qari Dawi to London in 2005. You called him a progressive voice. This is a man who called for Jews and homosexuals to be killed.
Well,
is that not anti-Semitic?
No, this is the man who called on Muslims around the world to donate blood after the attacks of 9/11. When he came to London, I went with him to the Regent's Park Mosque, where I heard him say, no man should hit a woman, and you should not discriminate against homosexuals. So I can't equate what I heard him say with what
he has
you get in the
called for
newspaper.
Jews to be killed. You embraced him.
I'm
a man who made a clear anti-Semitic statement.
No,
is that
he made
not
no
anti-Semitic?
anti-Semitic statement while he was here in London. I mean, this stuff has come up more recently. That's fine. But I
You
haven't
didn't know
seen him.
any of this?
No, all I knew,
You
here's a
didn't
man
do
who
due
said...
diligence on him?
I don't investigate people. I mean,
You don't worry about the kind of people you may be sharing platforms. I mean, you talk about
I'm happy to
you
share
talk about women. He also said to be absolved from guilt, a raped woman must have shown good conduct.
Well, none of that equates with what he said in my presence at the Regent's Park
Sure, but
Mosque.
Hitler was kind to dogs.
No, he was saying there at the Regent's Park Mosque, no Muslim should hit his wife and there should be no activity
And you didn't
against
know that he
homosexuals.
thought Jews should be killed?
No, I mean, he didn't say anything like that while he was there at City Hall at the Regent's Park Mosque.
There are now 11 Labour MPs, as we came on air, now calling for you to be suspended from the Labour Party. John Woodcock, Stella Creasy, Wes Streeting, Jez Phillips, Liz Kendall, Michael Douglas, Sadiq Khan, Tristram Hunt, Colin McGinn, Phil Wilson, Anne Turley, Luciana Berger. You're under some pressure this morning, aren't you?
Not really. I mean, I've simply said what I believe to be true, which is that Naz is not anti-Semitic. She was completely over the top, very crude remarks, but that doesn't make her an anti-Semite.
There are high emotions, as you will know. On your way in here, there was a bit of a confrontation between you and another Labour MP, John Mann. I think we can show a bit of it.
Over the top. You're Nazi apologist. You're Nazi apologist. Rewriting history. Rewriting history. Rewriting history. Go back and check what Hitler did. Go back and check what Hitler did. There's a book called Mein Kampf. You've obviously never heard of it. Written in 1925. Yes, you've never read it. You're looking at that. You're not looking at that. Hitler did in 1932.
I've been a journalist since 1973. I have never heard an MP call a fellow MP a Nazi apologist, a Labour MP to a Labour former Mayor of London, former Labour MP yourself, Labour activist, chair of a commission. Nazi apologist.
I mean, he went completely over the top. Actually, I was actually doing a radio interview at the time. He's bellowing that I'm a racist and anti-Semitic in my ear. But I've had that with John Mann before. A few weeks ago, screaming that I was, bigot down the phone.
But it doesn't worry you that all these Labour members, many of them in the mainstream, not your old Blairite enemies,
because most probably
they see you as an apologist for people making anti-Semitic statements in your party.
No, I'm not an apologist for anyone who makes anti-Semitic statements. They will be expelled from the party if they're anti-Semitic. What I'm saying is, don't confuse anti-Semitism with criticism of the Israeli government policy and treatment of
But I
Palestinians.
understand all that, but it's not criticism of the Israeli government policy for one of your members to say Hitler was the greatest person in history, or that Jews have long noses and slaughter the oppressed. That's not criticising Israel. That's clearly anti-Semitic.
And they'll almost certainly be expelled from the party, and that due process has already started.
Can you continue as head of this the Foreign Policy Commission and the Labour Party, given everything that has now been said?
These, things erupt. They dominate the news for 24, 48 hours, and people calm down again when they go back and check what you've really said. I'm sure a lot of people have had phone calls from the Daily Mail and the Telegraph saying Ken Livingstone said this, that or the other. When they talk to me, they'll know that's not what I'm saying. I think we leave Naz to be investigated. I believe she'll be cleared of anti-Semitism. If she isn't, she'll be expelled from the party.
But you have a problem with the perceptions of your own party.
There's nothing new in that.
Chris Bryant, the Labour shadow leader of the House, has said in Parliament today, he said, anti-Semitism is wrong, full stop, end of story. I am sick and tired of people trying to explain it away. And yes, I'm talking to you, Ken Livingstone.
Well, he should actually check my record, because when I became the leader of GLC, we worked with Jewish groups in London to actually get across to our kids growing up the scale of the Holocaust. We actually funded groups that were challenging anti-Semitism. I had a very good working relationship with the Jewish community.
Except you were found to have brought disrespect to your office when you likened a Jewish journalist to a concentration camp guard.
Well, I didn't know. I can't tell a journalist is Jewish or Catholic or anything. If a journalist is chasing you down the street at 9 o'clock at night, barking questions at you when you don't want to be interviewed, you might be rude to them.
Concentration
Some people
camp
might
guard?
hit them.
But you were found to have
He said he was just doing his job, which was.
But you were found to have brought not doing your job. The inquiry found that you brought disrespect to your office.
No, we went all the way to the High Court, and the judge opened his judgment by saying, I hope no one here is going to suggest that Mr Livingstone is anti-Semitic. We won the case.
What do you make of this, Nick Clegg?
Well, can I just... I had understood that the reason why Labour MPs are calling for you to resign is not because you've defended Naz Shah, but because you've reportedly said something about Hitler's approach to Zionism in the 1930s. Is that right?
When he didn't win the election, became the largest party in 32, his policy then was not to kill the Jews, it was to deport them all to Israel.
So this is the bit I have to say,
is it a fact
I'm
or
as shocked as you are. In all my years in politics, I've never seen the sort of perverse logic which starts throwing Hitler and a rewriting of history into an incredibly sensitive debate. I mean, what possesses you to talk about Hitler and your views of his approach to Zionism, given the given what happened, given the genocide, given the sensitivities around the Jewish community here and around the world, and look, of course everybody defends your right and everybody's right to be critical of the Israeli government. But this, I think there is, and by the way, I'm not going to be totally sanctimonious. My party, we've had issues. When I was a leader, I've had to suspend people of the Liberal Democrats.
You only suspended one for 3 months, and he was...
and others have left.
Said many terrible things.
But setting that aside, the point is this. There is something at the moment, I think Julian Neuberger said this last night, and she's right. There is something on parts of the left in British politics at the moment that enter into an incredibly intellectually contorted justification for starting to link Hitler and modern politics.
Colleagues think you're part of that.
No, I mean, the simple truth, you go back and check, that was Hitler's policy when he first came to power, to move Germany's Jews to Israel.
So that's all right then?
No, I denounce that.
So why would you bother raising the point?
I'm being questioned in an interview. I answer the question. You've never known me not answer a question you put to me.
No,
and I'm not going to lie.
I'm grateful.
I'm not going to go on. I'm not going to come on and say.
I don't understand because by 1940, Adolf Eichmann wanted to forcibly remove them to Madagascar. Now we have a Labour MP saying they should be forcibly removed to America. I don't understand what the point is.
Well, I'm asked a question, I answer it. You've never known me not to answer the questions you put to me.
Ken,
the simple truth is that was Hitler's policy in 1932 when he came to power.
You're a household name. A lot of people know you around the country, right? You are part, whether you like it or not, of mainstream politics. I never, ever thought I'd see the day that mainstream, well-known politicians like you would start raking over Hitler's views in a way that people would simply not understand. I mean,
things are either historically true or they're not.
You're not an academic historian.
No, that's one of the reasons I pursue the policies I do, is I do study history. Because if you study history, you can avoid making the same mistakes again.
But you're also a politician who's also responsible for choosing your words carefully and not entering into this weird, I think, contorted maze which allows you to start talking about Hitler in the same breath as the Jewish community in Britain today. I mean, it's an extraordinarily contorted approach.
What about political comparisons, though? Isn't that the problem, as Nick Clegg says? Why do you use the Holocaust as a political comparison to somehow highlight your objection to the Israeli government? That's what offends people.
My objection to the Israeli government is that for nearly 70 years, the
I understand
Palestinians
that,
have been kept in appalling conditions.
But why do you use the Holocaust and Hitler to underline that point?
I'm not making any link between the current Israeli policy and the Holocaust or Hitler. I was asked a question in an interview, I answered it. It happens to be a historical fact. If you say to me, is it true we were invaded by the Normans in 1066, I'm going to say yes, because it's true. And I'm not going to avoid answering the truth.
Right, I think we can speak to the Labour MP, John Mann. You will have seen John Mann and Ken Livingstone having a confrontation in the clip we showed a little earlier. John Mann, we've been speaking to Ken Livingstone. We showed your remarks. Mr Livingstone says you were over the top in calling him a Nazi apologist.
Well, he's a Nazi apologist, and he's a worse historian than he is a politician. He's factually inaccurate. He ought to read Mein Kampf, Hitler's book. He ought to study what the Nazis did, including when Hitler came to power in January 1933. He ought to look at the events of that year. He ought to see what the first, second, third thing that Nazi regime did, who it targeted and why. He ought to look at what he and his political leaders said about Zionism, and then he should reconsider why he's said these hugely offensive, grotesque remarks. The timing is calculated and offensive as well. He should not be sat on Labour's National Executive Committee. He should be suspended today.
Right. Ken Livingstone, what do you say to that?
Well, I'd simply say to John Mann, go back and check. Is what I said true or not? And the BBC, you've got a huge team of researchers. It will take just an hour or two to go back
what's
and
the
confirm.
point?
But
what's the point?
Because I was asked a question, I answered it. I have never, in 41 years since I won my 45 years since my first election, I have never lied. I've always answered the question.
But you seem to be implying that, and by the way, I don't think it's entirely historically accurate, because they'd already started attacking the Jews when he came to power, and Kristallnacht followed not long afterwards as well.
But it wasn't an attack to say he was going to deport all the Jews.
But you always seem to be implying that, oh, well, he wasn't such a bad guy because he just wanted to deport them all, but he only went wrong later on. I mean, people will think it's unbelievable what they're hearing in British politics today.
He was a monster from start to finish, but it's simply the historical fact. His policy was initially to send all of Germany's Jews to Israel, and there were private meetings between the Zionist movement and Hitler's government that were kept confidential, only became apparent after the war, when they were having a dialogue about whether or not to do this.
Right. I mean, John Mann, do you think Ken Livingstone is anti-Semitic?
Yes, he is. And his rewriting of history, well, he's factually wrong. Hitler was not a Zionist. Hitler blocked any attempt to get Jews into what was then Palestine. And the reason he did so, and he said so, and it was express, was because a Zionist state would be an international Jewish conspiracy and a base for it.
Right.
He said it in Mein Kampf, and it was said, indeed, his foreign minister specified that in great detail in 1937, outlining why they weren't prepared to allow Jews who they wanted to get rid of to leave to go to what was then Palestine, because it would have created this power base for an international Jewish conspiracy. Hitler was not a Zionist, and to suggest so is so grotesque. It's calculatedly offensive. I think you've lost it, Mr. Livingstone. I think you need some help. It's a deliberate, calculated attempt to cause problems, to stir up hatreds. What are you on at the moment?
Right.
You certainly shouldn't be on Labour's national executive.
I mean, do you understand how those remarks, you say you're telling the truth, but how they would upset a whole community, how they would upset people who lived, survived or died during the Holocaust, to be used in any sort of comparison today?
What John Mann just said isn't true. I've not said that Hitler was a Zionist. What I said was his policy in 1932 was to deport Germany's Jews to Israel. That doesn't say I agree with it.
But you said it earlier today. Are you withdrawing that?
I never said it.
Are you withdrawing it?
What I said was that was his policy. It was followed by private conversations between the Zionist leadership and Hitler's government about whether to carry out that policy. He didn't.
I invite you
Is this edifying for the Labour Party?
That you are raising these points about the early 1930s at a time when the party faces a crisis of anti-Semitism in its own ranks. People will be baffled that this is what you're doing, Ken.
I'm not raising these points. I was going to plan to have a nice quiet morning in the garden until suddenly I'm descended on by all these journalists saying, is this true, is that not true?
Well,
I'd be much happier just to do the gardening. So
well,
it's a
listen,
nice day out.
At least, which can't be said of all politicians, you've been here and you've answered the questions and
You can't say that of all politicians.
And that's exactly what I did say. We can't say that of all, and we're grateful for that. People will make up their own minds about what you're saying, and we'll let you go back to your garden.
Thank you.
John Mann, thank you, if you're still there.
Thank you.